Senate will come to order. Those not having privilege of the floor will please vacate the chamber. Those in the gallery and those on the floor will please rise. We're led in prayer by Father Don Higgs of the Sacred Heart Co-Cathedral in Charleston, West Virginia. Please remain standing after the prayer as the senior senator from the 5th leads us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Father.
Good morning. Let us pray. Gracious God, our Creator, you are the source of all life, all truth, all that is right and good. You are the real foundation of nations, raising them up to serve and care for the people dwelling in their boundaries. We ask your blessings on the members of this honorable body who gather to bring about the common good for the people of West Virginia. Bless them with wisdom, courage, and strength as they serve, discern, and act for the safeguard of all your people. May their healthy dialogues reflect the honor and respect we are to show each other, for we are made in your image and likeness. We thank you for this day and for the beauty of your people in this wild and wonderful state. May we all come to know your loving will. We ask this in your most holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Senior Senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Please join me in the pledge to our great country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading of the journal.
West Virginia Legislature, Senate Journal, February 22nd, 2023. The Senate met at 11:04
Senator from
a.m.
the 16th request unanimous consent further reading the journal is dispensed with and the journal be approved. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Further reading of the journal is dispensed with and the journal is approved. Introduction to guest. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure to welcome the honorary pages for the day. Please stand and be recognized as your name is called. As guest is the Senator from Mason, Ryland Price, Reagan Price, and Avery Cromley. As guest is the Senator from Morgan, Abigail Hall. As guest is the Senator from Summers, Senator Beatties for 1 second. As guest is the Senior Senator from Summers, Tripp McMillan. As guest is the Senator from Harrison, Chloe Nichols, Callie Moores, Gabriella Little, and Mackenzie Goodnight. As guest is the Senator from the 5th, Addison Kilgore. Will the Senate please make him feel welcome? Further introductions. Senator from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the North Gallery, we have several guests, members of West Virginia Health Freedom and MOVCAC. Jessica Powers, Amber Robinson, Pam Vandegrift, Jennifer Lynn, Dawn Robinson, Donnie Mann, and Lolita Nybert. Will the Senate please join me in making them feel welcome?
Senior Senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senator from Cabell and myself, we're proud to have a constituent here that's the father of Addison Kilgore. If Mac Kilgore would stand, and let me say a little bit, I had a great conversation with he and his daughter this morning, and this is a great program that we have, and I'm really glad that people get to come to visit this way. Mac, if you would stand.
Senator from Mason.
Mr. President, on behalf of the Junior Senator from the 4th and myself, we have seated in the President's Gallery some chaperones for our honorary pages, Avery, Ryland, and Reagan. We have Mr. Ed Cromley and Diana Cromley, if they would please stand. Diana is also the Mason County Clerk, and if the Senate would please make them feel welcome.
Senator from Marion.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Monongalia and all the senators that represent a portion of Marion County, we have some very special students with us today from the Advanced Placement Government class at Fairmont Senior High School. They're here with chaperones and faculty. Would they all please stand and let the Senate make them feel welcome? Thank you for coming.
Senator from Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Taylor County, we have with us today in the President's Gallery a group of our seniors from Preston County. There's about 30 total in the group. They split between here and the House. I think we have 13 to 15 of them up in the President's Gallery. So if they would all stand and the members make them welcome.
Senator from Upshur.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, visiting us from Webster County, we have Youth in Government, and on behalf of the senator from Randolph, I'd like to introduce the following people, and they'd please stand. Ava Snyder, Natalie Miller, Morgan Farlow, Wyatt Hosey, and Harley Matheny, and their chaperones, Lisa Hamrick and Robin Romano. If you please make them welcome.
Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joining us today in various galleries, we have Notre Dame High School students, and the teachers that are with them today is Mrs. Amber Goldison, Mrs. Diane Kinney, and Mrs. Krista Paul, as well as Mr. Lake. Senate, please join me and make them welcome.
Senator from Summers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, the junior senator from the 10th and I have a number of people here with us. Seated in the President's Gallery are the parents of our honorary page, Trip McMillian, his parents, Jay and Missy McMillian. If you'd rise. And we also have in the North Gallery his teacher, Ashley Mann. I also have a number of students, which we'll call by name a little later on, with us. They're from the James Monroe High School with the Youth Leadership Alliance, and if you would stand. And Dr. Scott Womack, who is also their instructor. Actually, you can stand up too. There you go. Would the Senate please make them all welcome?
Further introductions. Senator from Monongalia.
Mr. President, the senator from Marion and I, we met a student just a little while ago who told us she's going to be a member of this body one day. So I just asked the Senate to please make welcome a future state senator.
Senator from Oregon.
Thank you, Mr. President. On your behalf and mine, I want to introduce the grandfather of one of our honorary pages today. Our page is Abby Hall from Hampshire County, and her grandfather accompanies her, Alan Riley. Now, Alan is a longtime distinguished and retired attorney in the Eastern Panhandle and Potomac Highlands, and I'd ask him to stand. If I can't see him, if he's here in the House or the Senate, make him welcome.
Senator from Cabell.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Harrison and the senator from Lewis and myself, earlier this morning I had to face some very tough, pointed questions, and as usual, I was rattled. So the people that asked me those questions are here in the gallery. They are students in the 8th grade at Clarksburg Notre Dame Fighting Irish Middle School. So would Francesca and Braden please stand and be welcomed by the Senate? There they are.
Are there further introductions? Senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today with us, seated in the President's Gallery, the chaperones for several of our honorary pages. If their teachers, Mr. Jacob Yoakum and Mrs. Laura Stump, would please stand and be recognized, and the Senate please make you all feel welcome.
Are there further introductions? Senator from Marion.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the North Gallery, we have a former delegate and a very good friend of mine, and he always calls me his favorite senator. So I'd like for John Taylor to stand, and on behalf of his favorite senator and his son, Jay Taylor, who is also a senator, I'd like the Senate to please make him feel welcome.
Wow. Further introductions. If Senator from Summers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize, it was a tad out of order. Mr. President, today in the North Gallery we have 12 students from James Monroe High School, and they're with the Youth Leadership Academy. They're Shane Arthur, Emily Bailey, Emma Ballard, Brady Carr, Luke Farley, Luke Jackson, Sadie Maxey, Thomas Sabold, and Cole Thomas, Catherine Vyers, and Bryson Witt. I believe I have everything. They've recently traveled to Boston, Massachusetts for the January 2023 Harvard University Model United Nations Conference. They're the only school from West Virginia that was represented there. These students represented a country assigned to them and worked with over 4,000 other high school students from the United States and overseas to develop solutions to diverse problems. They gained valuable experience in research, critical thinking, logic, written and verbal communications, and empathy through participation. The generosity of the Monroe County School Board approving school levy funds for partial payment assisted parents in financing the trip. Would the Senate please help me give them a warm welcome, and if you please stand to be recognized one more time. Thank you.
Further introductions. Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of House Bill 2283 relating to authorized expenditures of revenues from certain state funds for fire departments.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Pensions and then the Committee on Finance.
House Bill 2937 to reduce the business license fee for West Virginia volunteer fire departments to $250.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3233 relating generally to uniform and equipment allowances for the National Guard.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Military and then the Committee on Finance. Communications from the Executive.
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration committee substitute for Senate Bill 267, updating law regarding prior authorizations, and Senate Bill 438, return to West Virginia Tax Credit Act, and reports the same back with the recommendation that they each do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. Tarr, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration committee substitute for Senate Bill 522, allocating percentage of county excise taxes for funding improvements to election administration, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute for committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. Tarr, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 534 relating to non-intoxicating beer, non-intoxicating craft beer, cider, wine, and liquor license requirements, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute for committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration committee substitute for Senate Bill 561 relating to administration of West Virginia Drinking Water Treatment Revolving Fund Act, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute for committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. Tarr, Chair.
Report will be received. Senior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration, read a first time.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will read the bill first time.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 561 relating to administration of West Virginia Drinking Water Treatment Revolving Fund Act. First reading of the bill.
Bill will be advanced.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration committee substitute for Senate Bill 590, transferring 911 personnel from PERS to Emergency Medical Services Retirement System, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute for committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. Tarr, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on School Choice has had under consideration Senate Bill 625, requiring certain transcripts to be accepted as record of students' performance for placement in micro-school programs, and has amended same, and engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2820 to provide Hope Scholarship recipients with the ability to play sports, and has amended same, and reports the same back with the recommendation that they each do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Patricia Puertas Rucker, Chair.
Report will be received. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that Senate Bill 625 be taken up for immediate consideration and read a first time.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will read the bill first time.
Senate Bill 625, requiring certain transcripts to be accepted as record of students' performance for placement in micro-school programs. First reading of the bill.
Bill will be advanced.
Your Committee on School Choice has had under consideration Senate Bill 628, revising provisions related to public charter schools, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Education. Respectfully submitted, Patricia Puertas Rucker, Chair.
Report will be received. Senator from Mason.
Mr. President, I request unanimous consent that the second committee reference of the bill be dispensed with, please.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration Senate Bill 667, requiring periodic performance audits of West Virginia Secondary Schools Athletic Commission, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Amy Ann Grady, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Economic Development has had under consideration Senate Bill 677, clarifying role and responsibilities of State Resiliency Officer, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Glenn D. Jeffries, Chair.
Report will be received. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the second reference to the Committee on Finance be dispensed with.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Your Committee on Outdoor Recreation has had under consideration engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2062, establish rules and regulations for e-bikes in West Virginia that more closely comport to federal law, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Mark R. Maynard, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Economic Development has had under consideration engrossed House Bill 3307, establishing the West Virginia-Ireland Trade Commission, and has amended same, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Glenn D. Jeffries, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Economic Development has had under consideration engrossed House Bill 3428, relating to the West Virginia Business Ready Sites Program, and has amended same, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Glenn D. Jeffries, Chair.
Report will be received. Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills.
There are none.
Resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 19 by Senators Woodrum and Trump, requesting Joint Committee on Government Organizations study operations of Division of Personnel.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 38 by Senator Clements, designating February 24th, 2023 as Corrections Day.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 39 by Senator Maynard, recognizing February 24th, 2023 as West Virginia Motorsports Day.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day. Motions. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to reconsider the vote by which the Senate amended House amendments to Senate Bill 128.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Senior Senator from the 17th.
President, I request unanimous consent to withdraw the Senate amendment to the House amendments to Senate Bill 128.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate amend the House amendments to Senate Bill 128.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the Senate to amend the House amendments to Senate Bill 128. Does the clerk have an amendment?
Yes, sir. Senator Takuba moved to amend the amendment by striking out everything after the enacting clause and inserting in lieu thereof the following.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The proposed Senate amendment would return the bill to the Senate version with the exception
Senior
of...
Senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry about that. So the Senate amendment would return the bill to the Senate version without the exception, with the exception of the House language. Number one, it would limit the length of any gubernatorial declared state of emergency to 60 days unless extended by a concurrent resolution of the legislature. And two, it limits the length of any gubernatorial declared Class 1 state of preparedness to 30 days unless extended by a concurrent resolution of the legislature. I urge adoption.
Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is adoption of the amendment to the House amendments to Senate Bill 128. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 128 as amended.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 128 as amended. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is the Senate concur in the House amendments to the Senate Bill 128 as amended. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. Question now is on passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those elected and having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than two-thirds of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House. Further motions. Senator from Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that your Committee on Health be discharged of further consideration of Senate Bill 584, that the measure be reported to the floor, taken up for immediate consideration, and read a first time. And I request the yeas and the nays.
It's a motion. It's not a debatable. It's not a debatable motion.
It is just a motion. You can't object.
Yeah. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to table the motion.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves to table the motion. Senator from Brooke.
Mr. President, if we wish to table the motion, we would vote yes. If we do not wish to table the motion, we would vote no. Is that correct, Mr. President?
Correct.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Roll calls demands sustained. The demand is sustained. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Senator from Taylor. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results on this question. 29 yeas, 5 nays, 0 absent, not voting. I declare the motion adopted. Are there further motions? Petitions?
There are none.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to return to the fourth order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution 20 originating in committee, requesting the Joint Committee on the Judiciary study the operations of the West Virginia Board of Risk and Insurance Management and reports the same back with recommendation that it be adopted. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received. Unfinished business.
There is none.
Bills on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 195, the Glucogen for Schools Act, third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the purpose of this bill is to authorize a licensed healthcare provider to prescribe in a school's name or a school district's name ready-to-use undesignated glucagon rescue therapy to treat severe hypoglycemic episodes. The prescription shall be accompanied with a standing order for school personnel to administer the glucagon rescue therapy to a student where he or she is having a potentially severe hypoglycemic reaction. The bill sets forth procedures for administering the glucagon rescue therapy and requires a school nurse approval for its administration. The bill also has liability protections to the prescribing healthcare provider and to the providing pharmacist in instances where the glucagon rescue therapy harms the student unless the applicable party acted with conscious disregard of safety. It further has liability protections of school personnel and specific other school-related parties that the administered rescue therapy in good faith in accordance with the school's written policies. Lastly, Mr. President, the bill authorizes in schools where a student has diabetes, designated school personnel to receive various training in two general categories: assisting students in diabetes care and how to identify and react to a student experiencing a diabetes-related emergency. I urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 480, modifying group accident and sickness insurance requirements, third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Wood.
President, this bill amends and creates new sections in the insurance code on group accident and sickness insurance by modifying the definition of bona fide association. The bill allows more business groups to join together for the purpose of purchasing group insurance. The bill also allows multiple employer welfare arrangements, which are benefit plans subject to ERISA, which is the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of '74, that provide medical benefits to workers and their dependents through group insurance or group self-insurance. Effective July 1, 2024, a bona fide association would be allowed to sponsor and operate a self-insured multiple employer welfare arrangement. In order to do so, the bill includes a variety of requirements, including the issuance of a certificate of authority by the insurance commissioner to the association, a detailed application with a filing fee, compliance with federal laws and regulations, compliance with actuarial principles and provisions of the Unfair Trade Practices Act, annual reporting, and minimum surplus requirements, and an excess loss funding program, including stop-loss insurance. Lastly, the bill requires rulemaking by the insurance commissioner. Such rules would come before the legislature for approval prior to the formation of any multiple employer welfare arrangement. The bill would provide employers more options concerning health insurance, and I urge passage and can take questions.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea, those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine. Ascertain the results. On this question, 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 577, reducing copay cap on insulin and devices and permitting purchase of testing equipment without prescription. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senate Bill 577 is the bill, the purpose is to limit the cost sharing to a total of $35 for a 30-day supply of a covered prescription of insulin and $100 for a 30-day supply for covered diabetic devices. The limits are in aggregate and exist regardless of the amount or type of insulin needed to fill such covered person's prescription. The bill includes the following instruments as devices: blood glucose strips, glucometers, continuous glucose monitors, lancets, lancing devices, and insulin syringes. It further provides that prescription is not required to obtain a blood testing kit for ketones. Mr. President, this is a bill was pushed very hard for by the AARP, and we had this bill passed last year. It got hijacked partly by me, and I applaud their efforts and urge passage of the bill.
Senator from Monongalia.
Would the Senator from Marshall yield?
Will the Senator from Marshall yield?
Yes.
Senator, I just wanted to understand the scope of this with respect to the various coverages for insurance. Does this only apply to private insurance?
Yeah, yes. There's not, one of the issues in the past few years was wanting to be fair across all of them and include PIA, which was still a concern of mine at the beginning of this session. And I did ask and obtain some information. For PEIA, for instance, they're not included in this bill. However, their prices that they currently charge per month for both insulin and insulin devices is in keeping and very close to the ranges that are set forth in this bill.
Okay. So our public employees insured by PEIA will have a similar pricing structure as what this bill outlines?
They have had, yeah, they have had. So there's, I mean, is it exact? No. Is it extremely similar and almost equal? I mean, like very few dollars of difference? Yes.
And Medicare?
You mean Medicaid?
Those on Medicare, is the pricing?
Yes, yeah, this includes, that's a good question. Where's it about Medicare? Yeah, federal, yeah. They said, they have 100 for devices too. I don't know about the devices for Medicare, but they did set, Medicare is set at a cap of 35 as well. Okay. They actually followed suit of multiple states led the charge. They followed suit with it. That.
And then Medicaid.
Yeah. No, so our bill, I don't know. Our bill applies to private insurance, okay? So the 20% of West Virginians that have commercial insurance, roughly. That's what this bill applies to. Medicare already has it. PEIA has similar ranges. I can't answer Medicaid.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 32 yeas, 2 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 594, specifying fairness and cost-sharing calculations for certain high-deductible health plans. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Wood.
Thank you, Mr. President. SB 594 amends sections in the insurance code that require insurers and pharmacy benefit managers to include any cost-sharing amounts paid by the insured or on behalf of the insured by another person when calculating an insured's contribution to deductible or co-payment requirement. This bill affects people only if they have a health savings account in connection with a high deductible health plan. The IRS recently indicated that cost-sharing laws such as ours may cause ineligibility for a health savings account if minimum deductible requirements are not met. The purpose of the bill is to prevent inadvertent ineligibility, and it allows people to retain the tax benefits associated with a health savings account, which consists of pre-tax money. Mr. President, I urge passage and can take questions.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, question for Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk should prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 34 yea, 0 nay, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill being made effective from passage. I request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, 34 yea, 0 nay, 0 absent, not voting. More than two-thirds of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 597, allowing Workforce West Virginia to hire classified service exempt employees. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Raleigh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 597 authorizes the Commissioner of Workforce West Virginia to hire up to 200 employees who are not members of the classified service of the state. Current law allows the Commissioner to hire up to 100 employees. This is a labor force, an effort to increase the labor force participation rate. I'll answer any questions and urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 34 yea, 0 nay, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 608, correcting list of items which are considered deadly weapons. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 608 would amend a single section of our state code. It's in Chapter 61, which is our criminal code, and it's a section in Article 7, which governs deadly weapons. And the amendment is to Section 2 of that article, which is the definitions section. This bill truly is a technical correction. The fifth definition in the list of definitions in that section is a definition of deadly weapon. And it says that it includes the instruments defined in subdivisions 1 through 8 of the section, and there are 15 subdivisions in the section, not 8. So this would change, the amendment adopted would change the section to read that deadly weapons are the instruments defined in subdivisions 1 through 15 instead of 1 through 8, and we're simply changing the number 8 to 15. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. Otherwise, I urge passage of the bill.
Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine. Ascertain the results. On this question, 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 620, increasing maximum number of registered voters per precinct and distance between polling places. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 620 comes to us from the West Virginia Secretary of State. It would amend a single section of the state code. The amendment is to the section in Chapter 3 of Article 1, Section 5. Chapter 3 is our elections code, of course. Article 1 is general provisions and definitions. And this section, Section 5, addresses the configuration and establishment of voting precincts. And the change in the law that would be affected by the passage of this bill is to increase, our current law now sets maximum numbers of voters who can be assigned to a particular voting precinct. And this would give the counties the option to increase the size of the voters in urban and rural precincts. The bill would increase the upper limit for urban precincts to 2,500 voters and no more than 1,500 voters in a rural precinct. There is also authority. It doesn't change the cap on rural precincts. That remains the same. There's also authority under this bill for counties, county governments, county commissions to consolidate precincts, but there are limitations on the geographical distance. The consolidated precinct cannot contain more than 5,000 total. That's up from 3,000 registered voters. And under existing law, there's a 1-mile radius limit. This would expand that to 5 miles. And so it's all permissive, be up to the county commissions to decide whether or not to do that when they exercise the statutory authority of drawing and configuring the voting precincts in their respective counties. Mr. President, be happy to try to answer questions. Otherwise, I urge passage of the bill.
Senator from Monongalia.
Would the senator from Morgan yield?
Will the senator from Morgan yield? The senator yields.
I will.
Senator, this deals with the upper end of the precincts. I'm curious as to the lower end. Is there current law that spells out how small a precinct can be?
There is current
law.
law.
Any changes to that?
There is a minimum size for voting precincts now, and that is for urban areas, it's 300 voters, and rural, it's 200 voters, and those are not changed by the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Further discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea, those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Senator from Marshall. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 27 yeas, 7 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 631, updating administration funding and requirements for federal elections held in West Virginia. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 631 also comes to us from the West Virginia Secretary of State. The bill would amend and reenact Chapter 3, Article 1, Section 48 of our state code, and amend and reenact two sections in Chapter 3, Article 2 of the code, Section 6 and Section 18. Section 3148 includes legislative findings. There are some technical changes and corrections to cross-references in that section to HAVA, which is the Help America Vote Act, was passed by Congress after the election of the presidential election of 2000. Some will remember that there were some counting issues associated with that election in the state of Florida. And those, after that, Congress reacted by passing the Help America Vote Act. There is an amendment to subsection M of that section, and that amendment provides that the State Election Commission may, with a recommendation from the HAVA Grant Board, the Help America Vote Act Grant Board, or other relevant federal entity, consistent with the legislative and emergency rules of the program, approve expenditures by the Secretary of State payable from the County Assistance Voting Equipment Fund for the purchase of election equipment and security upgrades and further administration of federal elections. As the technology of voting machines has become more advanced, they become more expensive. And so in West Virginia, the voting machines that are used by the 55 counties are purchased with combinations of county monies and federal monies, and this will allow the Secretary of State to utilize federal monies that come into the Secretary of State's possession for that purpose. There is also a change in the section that says that with respect to the voter registration, applications to register to vote can be received by the county commission. The current law is the close of business on the last day. This allows it to go to midnight on the last day. There are the amendments to Section 18 of Article 2. There's a technical amendment there, and then there is a change in the date. And this is a change in the date from 120 days to 80 days, a reduction, 80 days following election, when the county commission the clerk of the county commission shall enter the voting records into the statewide registration base. I don't know if the members of the Senate are interested in this, but this is designed to address a problem that occurred in my home county during the last election. And I'll tell you a little bit of the story, but the ballot for the Board of Education, when it was initially prepared, had language on it that said vote for no more than 2 candidates. And the problem with that was that this was the cycle where there were 3 board candidates to be elected. And it was discovered after the ballots had been prepared, and maybe it was discovered after early voting had started. And I think that ultimately the right decision was made, which was to take all the machines to, I think they took them to Casto and Harris and the guts of all that and redid it all, reprogrammed them all, because there were going to be lawsuits. We just knew there would be lawsuits if you had 3 school board members up to be elected and everybody's ballot said vote for no more than 2. So after the election, and thank goodness this didn't affect the outcome of the election, but after the election, when they counted, the ballots that had been cast before the ballot got changed were not counted. And so the Secretary of State actually realized a discrepancy between total number of voters, total number of ballots cast, and the actual returns. And then they realized what had happened when they changed the ballot and reprogrammed the machines. Fortunately, the ballots that were originally cast they had the flashcards and the data was preserved, and they were able ultimately to count them. This deadline relates to when the certification of the election returns occurs. And if this bill passes, that deadline will be advanced from 120 days after the election to 80 days after the election. I think that covers everything that's in the bill. Mr. President, be happy to try to answer questions. I urge the bill's passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Discussion. If not, the question before the Senate, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 641, clarifying when magistrate vacancies shall be filled. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill, Senate Bill 641, would amend a single section of our state code. It's also in the elections chapter. It's chapter 3. And the amendment is to a section in Article 10. Article 10 addresses filling vacancies in office and this is an amendment to Section 3, which covers elections or vacancies in the office of state officials, justices, judges, and magistrates. And so the members of the Senate who were here last year will remember that in the wake of the resignation and retirement of Evan Jenkins from our state Supreme Court of Appeals, we passed a bill that changed from 2 to 3 years the length of time that someone could be appointed to fill the vacancy. Otherwise, what would have happened, I think it was February last year, Mr. President, when Justice Jenkins resigned from the Supreme Court, we would have had an appointment that would have lasted just until election in May of last year. Last year was an election year. We said from 2 to 3 years. This bill conforms magistrate court to what we did last year. In other words, what it provides is that whenever there's a vacancy in the office of magistrate, if the unexpired term be for a period of more than 3 years, then there can be an appointment. And it says, current law now says 2. We didn't change the magistrates when we changed the Supreme Court. Mr. President, I'll be happy to try to answer questions. I urge the passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 644, updating contested election procedures. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 644 also comes to us from the West Virginia Secretary of State. It would amend 3 sections of our state code, and they are all in Chapter 3, which is elections chapter. They're all in Article 7, which relates to election contests, and the amendments are to Section 3, 6, and 7 of that article. This also, in short, what this bill does is it moves to the courts, the place where election contests occur. And so if there's an election contest from a municipal election, the current law is that it's decided first by the mayor and council. I think the law provides now that contests of an election involving the county and district contests, current law is that they're decided in the county court. That's right. This moves all that to circuit court. Part of the reason for this is what happened in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, a few years ago in their municipal elections, where there were, and it's a small municipality, Mr. President, not that many registered voters at all, but there were people who were registered to vote, who cast ballots, and the ballots were challenged. And in the election contest over whether those votes should be counted or not, the people who decided it were the candidates themselves, some of them, and there was widespread belief that that's not the way to do this. We have election contests decided by a judicial body that's independent and not affected. In that case, as I recall, some of the council members were requested to disqualify themselves from participating in judging their own election, and they refused to do so. And the vote in a couple of the races was so close that when it finally got to circuit court, and the circuit court ruled no, these are legitimate voters, you have to count their ballots, it changed the outcome of a couple of the races. So be happy to try to answer any questions, Mr. President. Otherwise, I urge the passage of the bill.
The question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk should prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 661, clarifying preferential recall rights for employees sustaining compensable injury. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Raleigh.
Thank you, Mr. President. The engrossed committee sub for Senate Bill 661 amends one section of code, Chapter 23, Article 5A, Section 3, and it amends the part relating to reinstating an injured employee who has sustained a compensable injury to the employee's former position of employment. Two particular areas that it deals with. Number one, the bill amends this provision to provide that the demand for reinstatement must be made in writing and mailed to the employer's principal office by United States mail, return receipt requested. And then the second part that is adjusted is that the bill replaces the current law with provisions relating to reinstatement to a comparable position and the right of preferential recall with language that provides that the employee's right to preferential recall exists for 90 days from the date the employee is released from the doctor to return to the employer's regular employment. I'll be happy to entertain any questions. Otherwise, I urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk should prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 32 yeas, 2 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk has a title amendment.
Senator Roberts moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question is on adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 3122, permitting certain types of rifles using an encapsulated propellant charge that loads from the breech. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Upshur.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill amends a section of code to provide that any person lawfully entitled to hunt with a rifle may use an encapsulated propellant charge that loads from the breech with the projectile loaded from the muzzle during any muzzleloader season except during the Mountain Heritage season. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk should prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed House Bill 3141 relating to the practice of dentistry. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the purpose of this bill is to update the practice of dentistry. It updates the definitions and adds new specialties and lists their qualifications as recognized by the West Virginia Board of Dentistry. The bill adds to the specialty list, and it defines 3 new specialties that are currently recognized by the American Dental Association. These include dental anesthesiology, oral medicine, and orofacial pain. The proposed bill also permits dentists to perform certain practices during a public health emergency. In summary, and just to reiterate, basically, it just updates the code to be consistent with new dental specialties that have originated since the last time we've updated the code. Mr. President, I urge the passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 79 relating to compensable diseases of certain firefighters covered by workers' compensation. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 268 relating to PEIA. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 423 increasing salary for certain state employees. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 554 exempting purchases made by auditor and West Virginia Enterprise Resource Planning Board from certain provisions of West Virginia Code. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 616, West Virginia Veterans Home Loan Mortgage Program of 2023. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 617 relating to Intellectual and Development Disabilities Waiver Program Workforce Study. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 646 creating emeritus physician license. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 649 authorizing Berkeley County Council to change its name to Berkeley County Commission. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 656 verifying legal employment status of workers to governmental agencies. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 657 West Virginia Long-Term Care Insurance Act. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 678 adding appropriations to DHHR Division of Human Services. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 730 expanding authority of Legislative Oversight Commission on Health and Human Resources Accountability Commission. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Maroney moved to amend the bill on page 3, section 7, line 21.
Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Marshall.
Mr. President, this amendment is technical in nature, and it changes the word designed to designated due to a typographical error. Urge adoption.
Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is adoption amendment offered by the Senator from Marshall. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading. Bills on first reading. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that all bills on first reading be considered read a first time and advanced to second reading.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Introduction of guest. Remarks by members? Introductions? Senator from Oregon.
Thank you. I apologize I'm not quick enough up to my feet anymore, but I think we have in the North Gallery now. I introduced him before perhaps, but he wasn't when he wasn't there. But the grandfather of our Page Abbey, Alan Riley, a longtime distinguished attorney in the eastern part of West Virginia, and a person who's doing more probably single-handedly to promote tourism in this state maybe than anybody else, with the Wapakoma Campground, which runs a mile along the South Branch River. Anybody who hasn't been there ought to take the opportunity to see it. But I'd ask if he's here to stand and for the Senate to make him welcome.
Are there further introductions? Remarks by members? Miscellaneous business. Senior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. Subject to announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements? Senator from Oregon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on the Judiciary will meet today at 2:30 p.m. 2:30 p.m. We're going to get started a half hour earlier than normal in the Judiciary Committee Room 208 West Wing.
Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Finance will meet today at 3:15 and 451M.
Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two announcements. Committee on Health will meet today at 1 p.m. at 341M. And, wait, is that 451M, sorry. Committee on Health will meet today at 1 p.m. and 451M. Thank you. And lunch today for the Health Committee is provided, and it will be in the Health Office.
Further announcements. Senator from Upshur.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Friday in the Senate Judiciary Room 208 West.
Further announcements. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have another committee announcement as well. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. for Finance Committee at 451M, 10 a.m.
Further announcements. Senator from Marion.
Thank you, Mr. President. The West Virginia AFL-CIO is hosting a joint labor caucus with our friends in the House of Delegates immediately after session in the House Government Organization Room. And per your request, Mr. President, it's being catered by the Chop House today.
Senator from Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to let everyone know that the Associated Builders and Contractors are visiting the Capitol today, and they're serving lunch right next door in the Senate President's Conference Room. Thank you.
Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Another announcement. Your Committee on the Judiciary, in addition to meeting today at 2:30, will meet tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock a.m. in room 208 West Wing.
Most people would be surprised to learn that 12.8 out of every 1,000 children in our state are in state custody. Almost 13 out of every 1,000 children. This leads the nation not just in the amount of children that are in state custody, but West Virginia also leads the nation in the entry rate in and out of state custody. If you were to gather all the children in the state of West Virginia that are in state custody right now, if you were to gather them all together and put them into a single zip code, it would be West Virginia's 27th largest city. That's the amount of kids that we're talking about. These kids are in desperate need, and they're completely dependent on us as a state to get it right. We cannot help them if we are not effectively and efficiently communicating about their custody, about their case. about where they're going to spend the rest of their lives. Most people do not realize how many different stakeholders enter a child's life when he or she's taken into state custody. You have the child placing agency. You have CPS workers, DHHR workers. Oftentimes you have therapists and medical providers. There'll be transportation providers, the guardian ad litem, of course the foster parents and biological parents, and the list goes on and on and on. The purpose of this bill is to create a web-based communication portal where all of these people who are charged with the care and custody of that child, the determination of where that child is going to spend the rest of his or her life, are on the same page, communicating under the same platform. It's mind-boggling to me that we've made it this far without a communication system like this. I would submit to you, and I know it goes unchallenged, we have a responsibility to take care of these children. They're in state custody because someone, or maybe a few different people, have already decided they're not going to take care of them. So we've got a responsibility to take care of them. And I know you don't disagree with that. But I would also submit to you that we have a responsibility to take care of all of the child placing workers, all of the DHHR workers, to aid in their jobs that most of us couldn't do. And then finally, I would submit that we have a responsibility to take care of foster parents and creating a place where they can get their questions answered, their needs met. That is taking care of the foster child, that's taking care of the workers, and that's taking care of foster families. A large number of foster families stop providing services. They close their homes and quit being foster parents because of poor care, poor communication, poor resources. This bill will fix that. This bill will help with that. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill. Thank you.
Is there other debate on the bill? Gentleman from the 15th, David Keaton's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chair lady yield?
Does lady from the 73rd yield for a question? Yes, lady does yield.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for working on this legislation, Madam Chair. The last time I saw it, it had come out of Senior Children and Family Issues before being sent to the Committee on Health. So I have just a couple of questions about particularly the dates in the bill. What was the justification for, in the committee substitute, removing things like on line 37 of the Senior Children and Family Issues Amendment, requiring things like releases of information, things like the procurement by December 31st of this year? What happened in between Senior Children and Families and how?
The procurement's already been started, so we didn't need a date.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you, ma'am.
Is there other debate on the bill? Does the lady wish to close debate on the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2538, requiring usage of child welfare information technology systems.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from passage.
The question is on the motion that the bill take effect from passage. Those in favor of that motion will please vote aye. Those opposed will please vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent. 2/3 of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 2607, clarify that vehicles with a capacity larger than 10 passengers may be used to transport students, provided that no more than 10 passengers may be transported at one time.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman from the 38th, Doug Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill allows certified professional or service employees to drive county board-owned and insured vehicles, provided that not more than 10 passengers, including the driver, are being transported at one time, and not more than 2 of these vehicles may be used for any school-sponsored activity. And the employee may use the vehicle to transport students to the school-sponsored activity, but not between the school and the student's home. Students may be transported to a school-sponsored activity in a vehicle that does not meet school bus or public transport ratings when no more than 10 passengers, including the driver, are being transported at one time. Mr. Speaker, that's the bill, and I urge passage.
The question is shall the bill pass? Gentleman from the 98th, Doug Espinoza, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the chairman yield?
Yes, sir.
I apologize for not asking you this sooner. I just hadn't had opportunity. So, what is the rationale for limiting it to 10 passengers? Let's say you have a bus that accommodates a dozen or 15.
My understanding is federal code limits it to 10, and the clarification in this bill was because vehicles that were manufactured to hold maybe 12 or 15 passengers were not allowed by what we introduced last year.
So is it a state prohibition or a federal prohibition?
I think it was federal on the 10.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question again is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on that question. There were 95 ayes, 2 nays, and 3 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2607, clarify that vehicles with a capacity larger than 10 passengers may be used to transport students, provided that no more than 10 passengers may be transported at one time.
Are the title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 2827, make public charter schools eligible for Safe Schools funds.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman from the 12th, Doug Chris, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon. The purpose of this bill is to amend the statute that make public charter schools eligible for safe school funds, provided that the school funds shall be distributed, providing the safe school funds shall be distributed first to meet the special ed video requirements, then the safe school entryway needs, and when met, on the basis of need, provide any monies distributed from the Safe School Fund for facility improvements shall only be extended on facilities owned by county boards of education, public charter school, or multi-county vocational centers, unless the improvement is such a facility may be improved with minimal effort. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There were 96 ayes, 1 nay, and 3 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 2827, make public charter schools eligible for Safe Schools funds.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2917, relating to allowing retired state employees who meet the minimum qualifications necessary to render post-retirement employment with the Department of Health and Human Resources.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the lady from the 4th, Doug Storch, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. House Bill 2917 would amend the provisions of the West Virginia Code relating to reemployment of retirements of the West Virginia Public Employees Retirement System. This bill would recognize that there is a compelling state interest in allowing retirees who could qualify and work as child or adult protective service workers because there is a shortage of qualified and willing persons to fill the vacant positions. The committee substitute inserts a sunset date and a 60-day break in service. I urge passage.
The question before the House is shall the bill pass. Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There were 97 ayes, 0 nays, and 3 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2917 relating to allowing retired state employees who meet the minimum qualifications necessary to render post-retirement employment with the Department of Health and Human Resources.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill be effective from passage.
Gentleman from the 8th moves that the bill take effect from passage. Those in favor of that motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on that question. There were 97 ayes, 0 nays, and 3 members absent. 2/3 of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective for passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3005 relating to accelerating the conversion of the state excise tax on the privilege of transferring real property into a county excise tax.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having read? Okay, if not, gentleman from 97, Doug Hardy, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill, the purpose of the bill would amend the provisions of the West Virginia Code relating to the excise tax on the privilege of transferring real property or transfer tax. Currently, there is a state transfer tax in the amount of $1.10 per $500 of value, and a county transfer tax in the amount set by the County Commission of each county in the amount not to exceed $1.65 per $500 of value. Beginning July 1, 2021, 10% of the state transfer tax has been retained by the counties in which it was paid. Beginning in July 1, 2022, another 10% for a total value of 20% of the state transfer tax has been retained by the county in which it was paid. Current law will continue an additional 10% be retained by the counties in which it was paid until the entire state transfer tax is retained by the county in which it was paid in 2030. This bill would accelerate the timeline and would require an additional 45% for a total of 65% of the state transfer tax be retained by the county in which it was paid and the entire state. Transfer tax will be retained by the county in which it was paid by 2025. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
Question before the House is shall the bill pass. Is there debate on the bill? Gentleman from the 52nd, Doug Rowe, is recognized.
Yes, if the gentleman would answer a question.
Yes,
Does this include any increase in the transfer tax?
It does. So we passed a bill in 2021 that was HB 2967 that started this process, and that was 10% for over 10 years. So there will be a rise in the excise tax as property values rise and as more property changes hands. And I know what you're getting ready to ask me, and if the county commission changes the rate, which cannot go above $1.65 per 500 of value, that it would include that also.
All right, let me see. In other words, does the rate increase?
No, the rate does not increase. All the rates stay the same. We're just letting the counties keep the portion that used to come to the state general revenue.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there debate on the bill? If not, the question is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on that question. There were 95 ayes, 3 nays, and 2 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3005 relating to accelerating the conversion of the state excise tax on the privilege of transferring real property into a county excise tax.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from passage.
Gentleman from the 8th moves that the bill take effect from passage. Those in favor of that motion will please vote aye. Those opposed will please vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 96 ayes, 2 nays, and 2 members absent. 2/3 of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Revised committee substitute for House Bill 3110 relating to funding the Office of Oil and Gas in the Department of Environmental Protection.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman on the 12th, Doug Chris, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to ensure that the DEP Office of Oil and Gas has sufficient funds to inspect oil and gas wells in the state. Currently, there are only 10 inspectors ensuring the integrity of over 75,000 oil and gas wells. This bill adds 3 new revenue streams to fund the DEP Office of Oil and Gas. This should be result in enough revenue for over 20 inspectors. First, the effect is July 1 of 2023. The bill dedicates 0.75% of the severance tax for oil and gas to go to the Office of Oil and Gas. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Gentleman on the 12th. Clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Revised committee substitute for House Bill 3110 relating to funding the Office of Oil and Gas in the Department of Environmental Protection.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3148 relating to financing municipal policemen's and firemen's pension and relief funds.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, lady from the 4th, Doug Storch, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is some riveting stuff. House Bill 3148 would amend provisions of the West Virginia Code relating to the municipal police and firemen's pension and relief funds. Current law provides 4 methods of funding for municipal firemen and policemen's pension and relief funds: the standard, alternative, optional, and conservation. The alternative and conservation methods of funding are not actuarially sound. The standard and optional methods of funding are actuarially sound. The optional method of funding requires contributions sufficient to meet the normal cost of the pension and relief fund and amortize any actuarial deficiency over a period of not more than 40 years beginning January 1st of 2010. The bill would provide a 5th method of funding, the optional second, which would require contributions sufficient to meet the normal cost of the fund and amortize any actuarial deficiency over a period of not more than 40 years beginning July 1 of 2023. The bill would authorize a municipality using the conservation method of funding to convert to either the optional or optional 2 method of funding beginning July 1 of 2023. The bill would also eliminate the ability of any municipality using the alternative method of funding to choose to use the conservation method. The committee reported a committee substitute that made non-substantive technical cleanup and clarifying corrections and amends the bill to include municipalities that are using the alternative method of funding as eligible to choose either optional 1 or optional 2. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Lady from the 31st, Doug Mazzocchi. Clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 98 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3148 relating to financing municipal policemen's and firemen's pension and relief funds.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3337 prohibiting additional drug and alcohol treatment facilities and services in a certain county.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, lady from the 73rd to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the Certificate of Need statute under health services that cannot be developed, this bill lists the development of licensed substance abuse treatment beds in any county which already has greater than 250 licensed beds as prohibited. So if a county has 251 beds, additional beds are prohibited from being added. There is a proviso that disallows the counting of beds if a facility has been purchased for such purpose before February 1st, 2023. That's all, Mr. Speaker.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Gentleman from the 54th, Douglas Pushkin, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chair yield?
Yes.
This is in the section of code about certificate of need, correct? And
My favorite section.
I know. And sorry to bring up a touchy subject here. Are these facilities currently required to have get a certificate of need before they open?
They are not, no.
They are not, and this doesn't place that requirement on them. This is simply puts a moratorium on how many can be built in each county, is that correct?
That's correct.
It doesn't require a certificate of need. Okay, and this is only regarding like licensed, like treatment beds, not recovery beds, correct?
Yes, just treatment beds.
Okay, thank you for yielding. Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman's recognized.
Well, I really appreciate the intent, and appreciate my old friend from the 13th working with us on improving a bill that really had a lot of issues when it was in its many different forms. I still have a real issue with putting a number, an artificial number, on how many people we can help at any given time in a certain county. And I understand the issue, and I definitely understand the issue, and I sympathize with the issue going on in Wood County, where there's a disproportionate amount of these types of treatment beds in one county. If you look at the graph and see how many Kanawha has, how many Cabell has, and how many Wood has a disproportionate amount. There's a very good reason or a bad reason why, something that happened in the legislature years ago that gave Wood County this amount. I don't think this is the way to really deal with it by passing a state law that would place an artificial limit on each county. I do think 250 is actually, right now, is more than what each county would probably need, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I will add this, there is an unintended consequence to this bill that you might want to think about. When you cap a license, when you put a limit on it, you just increase the value of it. So there will be facilities and entities that will be purchasing these licenses in every county because you've now limited it. It might have the reverse effect of what you're trying to do. I would love to really address the issue of the regulation of treatment beds, recovery beds, medically assisted. We had other bills about medically assisted treatment programs. It's something we really need to work on, but I think we really need to take some time and work on it in a productive manner that looks into the treatment of the patients, the needs of the community. I think just placing a number on this, it creates a whole new set of issues. So, yeah, I would be more than willing to work with anybody on this issue, and I appreciate the work we did. This could very well create more problems than what we already have now by increasing the value of the license with this bill. But thank you.
Gentleman 13th, Douglas Heckert, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill was not designed to hurt or help any county in the state of West Virginia. As my good friend said, we have worked together on this, and I'm sure we'll work in the future on to make it better. Recovery is not a thing that starts and stops on will and demand. What this will do is keep Wood County from being overrun from the counties that don't want them, don't want to take responsibility for them, and the other states that don't want them. We have 26% of the beds with 4% of the population. It is not meant to hurt anyone. It is meant to spread it out so the counties that do need help can get it and nobody gets overrun. I urge passage. Thank you very much.
Lady in the 49th, Dr. Tully.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We make stellar defense attorneys for our own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. We also make excellent prosecutors for the thoughts, opinions, and ideas of those who are in opposition to us. Within the Republican ranks, we also are quick to throw around labels like rhino when Republicans differ. Often this is done without holding a conversation about differences or exploring the reasons why others, even within our own ranks, see something through a different lens. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, we're all guided by different life experiences, and we all represent different geographical areas with differing needs. I'd be willing to assert that not 100% of everyone within a political party adheres to the political party platform all of the time. The West Virginia GOP state platform advocates for, and I quote, improving accessibility to medical care and allowing more choice with less government control and regulation between the physician and the patient. This bill does not support that premise. In fact, it does impose a certificate of need and restricts the free market. Nonetheless, I can certainly understand why my colleague from the 13th proposed this bill. His area is struggling with an issue, and he thinks that this bill may help address it. I myself am torn on how to vote on this bill. I do not support overregulation, but I am sympathetic to my friend's plight in his district. I do not intend to tell anyone else how they should vote on this bill, but I do encourage all within our ranks to be willing to communicate with each other before casting aspersions toward other colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question again is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, does the lady from the 73rd wish to close debate on the bill? If not, the question is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on that question. There are 77 ayes, 21 nays, 2 members absent. The majority of members voting in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3337, prohibiting additional drug and alcohol treatment facilities and services in a certain county.
Are there title amendments?
Delegate Summers moves to amend the title.
Question is on the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of adoption of the title amendment will please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from passage.
Question is on the gentleman's motion that the bill take effect from passage. Those in favor of that motion will please vote aye. Those opposed will please vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Lady from the 81st, Doug Walker. Clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there were 95 ayes, 3 nays, and 2 members absent. 2/3 of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective for passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3340, to revise the West Virginia Tax Increment Financing Act.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? Okay, if not, gentleman from the 97th, Doug Hardy, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of the bill would amend 5 statutes relating to the Property Tax Increment Financing Authority by Article X58A of the West Virginia Constitution. Amendment ratified 2002. Tax increment financing captures the projected increase in property tax revenue gained by developing a designated geographic area, uses that increase to assist in paying for that development project. That is the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Lady from the 70th, Doug Petito, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am forced to speak to this bill. Basically, we have a handout that's been handed out to everyone, and the information's very good, but there again, we are directing this bill to one delinquent TIF in Harrison County. Yesterday, when I spoke to the amendment, I erroneously stated that the project was in my district. The project is in Bridgeport, which is Delegate Kimball's district, and I had intended to say it's in my county, meaning that I am familiar with the parties of that TIF. Regardless, I am not opposed to the municipality issue, but rather the fact that I need the extension to be available to all of the TIFs throughout the state that are incurring difficulties as a result of COVID and other issues that come up with the development. In reading the original bill, it appears that initiating and renewal of the bill and the amendment will require basically the same process of public hearings, negotiations, and so basically the handout states, and I thank her for this, states that neither the state, county, or municipality has liability in the event of default. The burden rests with the bondholders. In that case, I feel that the bondholders and the delinquent TIF should work it out. And in reading the in reading the strikeouts, which is on page 14 and 15, the strikeout is, and obtain the formal consent of the governing body of the Class 1, 2, 3, or 4 municipality, a portion of which is located within the boundaries of the development or development district. The insert is, no consent or approval for the local levying bodies having the power to levy taxes on the property within the development or redevelopment district shall be required in order to amend such order or ordinance for the purpose herein described, aside from the county commission and or governing body of the municipality which is amending the ordinance. I encourage passage of this bill for the benefit of the TIFs throughout the state. Thank you.
Lady from the 71st, Kimball's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, everyone. Would the Chair of Finance yield, I'm sorry, the Vice Chair of Finance yield for a few questions?
Maybe someday.
Oh, boy. Thank you. Does this bill only apply to one area of the state?
No, it applies to all TIFs.
Okay. Do you know how many TIFs exist now in the state?
I do not know. Council may be able to help me with that. Council does not know.
Do you know how many lie within a boundary of a municipality?
I could not answer that.
What is the length of time on TIFs?
They are typically 30 years, and they can be extended 5. This piece of legislation gives the county commission, the duly elected officials from the county, the ability to extend this up to 15 years.
So then it would be the TIFs would run for how many after the extension?
Could be up to 15 years.
So it would be 45 years.
Could be.
Okay. Let's see. For a TIF to be approved, which entities are currently asked to participate in the approval process?
If a TIF is in a municipality, the municipality may approve the TIF themselves. If the TIF is in a municipality and or in a county, the county and the municipality must approve the TIF.
And for the municipality to approve it themselves and be the bond issuer, then they have to be a Class 1 or 2 municipality, or?
I'm waiting on council to give me, we don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I believe it's a 1, 2, or 3.
Okay. So
and they would go through the process of going through the economic development. There's a whole process in which that is applied for.
Oh. Okay, so not just the bond issuer participates, though, in that approval process?
No. There's a process in which the economic development office is involved, and there's state involvement in that.
Okay, and then also the local municipality if the TIF is within its bound?
Yes, and the local county council if it's in the county.
Okay, so why would a city or a town be asked to be involved or to be brought to the table for approval?
I can only tell you what this piece of legislation is asked to do. This piece of legislation was drafted to be able to give the county commission, who is the duly elected officials of the county in which the TIF sets in, the ability to extend that TIF up to 15 years. Doesn't say it has to be 15 years, up to 15 years.
Okay. So if this bill passes and developers across the state want to extend the length of the TIF, which entities will be involved in making that decision?
So if if that TIF was, I want to ask council. So if the TIF was in the municipality, it would be just the purview of the municipality. If it is in the county, it would be the counties.
Well, aren't all municipalities in the counties?
I'm saying if the municipality set up the TIF.
Oh.
Remember, the county does not have to be involved in the TIF if the municipality sets it up.
And they
It's
would be
vice versa the other way.
The bond issuer.
And the bond, well, obviously the bond issuer.
Okay. So are we changing any of the requirements in regard to who will be asked to approve a TIF?
No.
So we don't have any other bills out in the system that'll change the approval process?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And finally, have you read the handout that I've given out in regard to the TIF in my district?
I have read the handout, and actually I have a few things I'd like to say about it when I close on the bill.
Okay. So if you have read it, then you read the statement that was made following the citations of Chapter 7, Article 11B, 19C and D?
I would say yes.
Which said...
But I would also caution, the members that this is something that is put out by a firm that is representing the people that are opposed to this. So understand.
Oh, sure. I mean, he says it at the top. There's no.
Certainly understand that.
Oh, sure. So, okay. So back to that Chapter 7, Article 11B, 19C and D. It says, neither the state nor county nor municipality have liability in event of default. The burden rests on the bondholders. Is that right?
We've been trying to get to the bottom of actually who's going to be, and we have had questions upon questions about who would be responsible if these bonds would fail. Now,
well, what I'm talking about, though, forgive me for interrupting, but it actually is, I think, a code citation. So that is, in C and in D, that's the conclusion that one could come to, is that neither state, county, or the, let's see again, nor municipality have liability in the event of default.
So it's your thought process, or it's the process that you gain from this.
Yes.
That if the bonds fail, the municipality, nor the county, nor the state would bear any brunt from that?
That's just what this opinion says. That's not my personal opinion.
That's not my opinion either.
Okay.
Someone will bear the brunt of that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Now, can I ask you a few questions?
I appreciate you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
You're asking the gentle lady from the 71st to
I'm asking the gentle lady from the 71st just a few questions.
Okay.
Do you have any idea? I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry. Do you have any idea of the amount of infrastructure that was created by this TIF?
I have an idea from what I see, but...
In a monetary value?
Enlighten me.
$73 million of infrastructure has been given to the municipality through this TIF. Do you have any idea how much municipal taxes have been raised through this TIF?
No, actually, what I'm actually dealing with in this bill is the fact that the municipality was asked to participate in the approval process, and now, many years later, the municipality is being shoved away from that table and not able to participate in the extension.
And I will tell you that I don't have any more questions. I'm going to keep my powder dry for my close.
Okay.
But I would say that this piece of legislation does one thing. It allows the county commission, who are the duly elected officials of the county, the ability to extend the TIF up to 15 years. That's all it's doing. It's giving the county in which the TIF sets in, who are the duly elected officials of that county, who I think would bear the brunt of that if the TIF did fail, if the bond did fail. I think the county would bear the brunt of that firstly, and then if that didn't continue on, I think it would move to the state level, but it gives them the ability to extend this up to 15 years.
Okay, well, I appreciate your position.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 64th, Doug Burkham is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know, ladies and gentlemen, this can get a little confusing and TIFs and who's liable and all of that. So I'm going to simplify it. There was a game that was set up for 30 years under a certain sort of circumstances. And we are now injecting ourselves in the middle of that game, and we are changing the rules of the game and the length of the game. So I don't necessarily care what that game is, but I'm not sure that that is our responsibility to be doing that to current things that are in place. Now, if you wanted to say this wasn't working today and moving forward into the future, we want a different process, we want a different plan, let's talk about that. But to insert ourselves in the middle of a current game and contract that is going on, I don't think is a good place to be. And so I'm going to urge rejection. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 22nd, Doug Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So as I've reviewed this legislation, I've been very conflicted. On the one hand, if the state has any liability whatsoever, our credit rating, our bond ratings, those sorts of things, and an agreement was entered into by a city and a county, and then it turned out to be a bad deal, right? It is their responsibility, in my opinion, to handle that. And there's no reason why the state should bear detriment based upon what a political subdivision did. So on the one hand, I think to myself, well, they got themselves into this, they're going to have to pay for it, right? Whether it was 30 years ago, whether, you know, and they want to extend this an additional 20 years. On the other hand, as I've reviewed this legislation and heard testimony in committee, you want to make sure that is the case, that we are the ones that are potentially on the hook, or that this could cost us interest dollars and worse interest rates on our bonds that we may issue. And I've been very conflicted about this. This morning, as I read through the letter that the gentlelady from the, I think it's the 71st, put out, that says, you know, in the law here that we will not bear that we will not deem to have secured this by the full faith and credit of the county commission, the municipality, or the state. I don't know that means that we don't have any credit concerns related to this. So as I look at this, I'm not sure that bond counsel would agree, and I've been very, very concerned about the state's credit rating. So then I start moving into the discussion of the instant project, and we're making general law here. This is not just about one particular project. And I've heard from my county commissioners multiple times that a city essentially can set up a TIF district, and it impacts the county's tax revenues no matter what, and the county basically has to rubber stamp it. That's the current status of the law. So that causes me some additional concern. And perhaps setting up in the law a means by which a municipality would have to say, hey, we go into this, it ends up being a bad deal, the county commission may extend this of their own accord without us weighing in. So I've been thinking a lot about that. And then I look at the specific deal. This specific deal seems to have been a pretty bad deal. This is in default. The one that everybody's talking about in Bridgeport, I don't know the developers, I don't know the mayor of Bridgeport, I don't know anybody that's there personally, and I have no opinion of them individually. But what we heard in testimony in the Finance Committee is that there's not just a property tax increment financing district for this project, not just on the property tax revenues, but there's also a sales tax increment financing district for this developer. And that one's already in default as of December. And what we heard from council and from some presenters, I believe just yesterday in the Finance Committee, is that those bonds are for sure issued in the name of the county commission and of the state, of a political subdivision of this state. Those are already in default. So with caution and with a lot of concern relative to what our colleagues in the Senate may do, and with a significant request that our colleagues across the hall figure out for sure who's going to be on the hook and if there's any possible detriment to the credit rating of the state of West Virginia, I'm going to have to urge passage of this bill. But that's with a lot of caution. And I would please ask all of you to call your senators and tell them to get to the bottom of this. Because if this just serves to bail out a developer who's already failed pretty bad with not just one but two revenue streams underlying and underwriting the project there, from the sales tax and the property tax, then we shouldn't do it. But if it's going to harm the state and cost us a heck of a lot more money on things like road bonds and any other indebtedness that the state would ever take on, then the counties and the cities got themselves into this, and we're going to have to make sure that they take care of it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 84th, Doug Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman from the finance?
Sure.
Okay, so now, just trying to get straight. We're passing a bill that's going to influence and cause the county, giving them the right to make a decision for the city, but we don't really know who's responsible or who has to pay for these or who's going to be held liable. But we're still passing this bill and we're not sure who's liable? That sounds kind of crazy to me.
It would be my purview that we are passing a bill that gives the county commission the ability to extend the TIF up to 15 years. My personal feeling is I feel if the bonds do fail and if the bonds are in failure, that the county commissioners will be the first ones to bear the brunt of that. Now, that is, I'm not a lawyer, that's my personal feeling, and that's why that I think, and this is why that I am representing this bill, because I do believe that the county commissioners would be the first ones to bear the brunt of that, and if they could not handle that financial burden, as the gentleman from the 22nd said, it would fall to the state. And the state, I do think that the state, to protect our own bond ratings, would step in and make those whole.
But also, initially, the city had to be vested into it.
They did.
So now you're wanting to take the city out of it so they don't have to have any liability now and give it all to the county? Is that what you're wanting to do?
We don't want to take the city out of anything. The city will continue to collect the revenues that they have been collecting since the TIF was started. A very generous amount of revenues that I will tell you about here in just a few short minutes. We are just giving the county the ability to be able to extend the TIF. And the city and the municipality will continue to collect all of the revenue that is due to them that they have been collecting since this economic development project has taken off.
So then if in 15 years it doesn't work out then they can't go back to the city. It's strictly on the county, even though the city's getting money from it. Why are we wanting to do that? I don't
This
understand.
legislation would give the counties the ability to extend it without the municipalities being involved.
Correct.
Up to 15 years.
But for them,
But the municipalities will still gain every bit of advantage that they have gotten since the TIF was started for the extension of the TIF. Such as B&O tax, such as sales tax, such as property tax from adjacent areas. I can run through a laundry list. Building permit fees, a whole laundry list of economic development that the municipality has been collecting since the TIF has started. We're just giving the county the ability to extend the TIFs.
Oh, so the county does the snow removal, or is it the city? Or does, in that project, who takes care of the project?
So in this particular project, a good portion of the project is a development which a homeowners association takes care of road maintenance, takes care of snow removal, and takes care of a large portion of that. The city, the municipality in this case, receives a sales tax, a B&O tax. They have the 1% because they're a home rule city. They receive a B&O tax. They receive all the building permit fees, hotel motel tax, and the construction B&O tax. Those are some of the things. Plus, they've inherited $750 million worth of infrastructure. Plus, the developer has given the municipality, I want to check my numbers here, sir. So the municipality has received 1,500 acres. This developer let the municipality annex 1,500 acres for this project, which they receive the revenues that we just discussed on. And all we're asking in this piece of legislation is to give the county the ability for the county commissioners to extend this TIF. This TIF has existed.
And all I'm saying is, why do you want to take the city out?
I would say that right now that we're at a crossroads where it's a policy decision. If the gentleman is not inclined to vote to take the cities out, then that would be your policy decision. The policy decision that I'm going to make is to support this piece of legislation that would give the county the ability to extend up to 15 years.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to vote against it. But
okay, thank you, sir.
The gentleman from the 18th, Douglas Butler, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Vice Chairman yield again, please? I'm just curious here, as I'm hearing the discussion, when you say that the county will bear the brunt, are you meaning that the county commissioners will somehow be personally responsible other than being, up for re-election and so forth?
Yeah, I believe, we know, and the county commissioners could be financially responsible. I'm not saying that this is just a political. We're going to see a bill coming over from the Senate that's going to, I don't want to get too far off track here, that's going to show that the county commissioners are going to be responsible for jail bills.
Okay,
so I do believe that the county commissioners will bear the brunt of this, or the county itself.
So the county commissioners actually have personal responsibility for the decisions they make as commissioners?
I don't want to misspeak and say that. I will say that the county could bear the financial brunt.
Okay.
And that's as far as I'm willing to go.
Okay, and the municipalities are obviously part of the county, correct?
Yes.
So if the county ends up, the taxpayers of the county, which is who's represented by the commission, if the taxpayers bear the brunt, then that means the taxpayers within the municipality are also bearing the brunt. Would that be correct?
Yeah, the municipality, people that live in the municipality pay county taxes also.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Speak to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, gentleman is recognized.
Just briefly, we've heard a lot about this. To me, I don't think I can support this bill that takes a main part of the population and the more direct representation in many cases. If you happen to live in a municipality, then you're electing your city council that probably lives 2 or 3 doors down, at least in my part of the state. So I think it's unwise to take the municipalities out of this equation. But thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lady in the 73rd, Douglas Summers, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to speak against the bill as well. And it's kind of tough when you do know the players, right? This is going to be a great, maybe, development 5 minutes from my house. But recently I attended Russ Sobel's lecture over at the Cultural Center. And if you've read his book, Unleashing Capitalism, he doesn't recommend TIFs for this exact reason. TIFs sometimes bring people to the table that are not fiscally able to complete the project. So I'm afraid that's what we're gonna see here. I am concerned when it says no county commission shall establish a development or redevelopment district, any portion in which the boundaries are within the municipality without the formal consent of the governing body. So they did that, but yet we don't feel that we need their consent, and these are duly elected officials of the city as well, but we don't think we need their consent to change the agreement. I agree with the gentleman from the 64th because I think 45 years is too long. If you can't do it in 30, I hate to extend and tie this up for 45. I believe that this is just bad economic policy, and I would urge rejection.
Gentleman from the 29th, Douglas Dillon's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Vice Chair of Finance yield for a question? Thank you. There's a lot of discussion about TIFs here today, and for the benefit of those at home and those observing this session today, what is a TIF?
So a TIF is a tax incremental policy. It's a program where, I'm going to explain to you the best way, the easiest way I think to explain it is if you take a piece of property that's worth $100,000 and you are now going to develop that property, that property can be designated, a geographical area can be designated as a TIF. Any development that happens within that area that raises the value of the property from we say it starts at 100,000, goes to $1 million. The incremental money that's raised from that property tax can be used as a dedicated payment source for the bonds that are sold to generate revenues to do the project. That's a TIF. Thank you. Thank you.
For what purpose does Lady from 71st Kimball seek recognition?
I'd like to speak to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Has the lady spoken already?
I have not. I've asked
Okay,
questions.
the lady is recognized.
Thank you. Let me stress, the TIF that has been the subject of much discussion in conjunction with this bill is in my district. It's District 71. While I appreciate the comments made by the gentlelady from the 70th, as she's already said, I must let everyone know that there are 4 of us representing Harrison County, and our opinions differ, obviously, with respect to whether to vote red or green on this bill. I can assure the other delegates in Harrison County that if Shinston or Clarksburg, Lost Creek or West Milford, or maybe Logan from the southern part of the state, I can assure all of you that if you all were going to be asked to extend a deal like this for 15 years, I'd be standing right here and I'd be advocating for those communities to have a seat at the table because they were there in the beginning of the contract. They should be there again at the table to decide if those terms, once agreed upon, should be extended or they should be changed. I might have supported this bill if my amendment had passed, but not only will I be voting red, but I want to give a fair warning to other communities. You will be courted to give your support to the creation of one of these TIF districts, but your original terms could be changed by a mere action of courting and convincing this body to do so. So I will be voting red. I encourage others to vote red as well. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Gentleman from the 87th, Dr. Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this piece of legislation. As I said yesterday, West Virginia is undergoing an economic renaissance with all the growth of major manufacturers in the state. As a result, we are going to have to build across this state support facilities for those. And I'm not talking about, like Nucor's, like something for their steel, but there's going to be restaurants, hotels, shopping centers. And this is a tool that we use to build the road network, the water system, the sewage system, to make these happen. This is one of the only financing tools that our counties and municipalities have at their disposal. You heard a brief description of how a TIF district works. If you've got a vacant lot that's valued at $1,000, and then you put it in a TIF district, and then you build a McDonald's on it that raises its value to $250,000, the county's general fund or the municipality still sees it as $1,000, but that extra revenue goes to pay for the road that you just built, the water lines that you just laid, the sewer system that you just put in, that allowed that business to exist. Now, when we go in and we make an agreement with someone, when we go to the bank and we borrow money, most of the time we have collateral. These bond issuers have no collateral. They can't repossess a road. They can't repossess a water line. So this is more like a signature loan. That we are putting the full faith of West Virginia, or whatever municipality or whatever county, that we are going to pay this loan. Now, things have happened in the past, in the recent past. COVID delayed construction, stopped some projects completely that were figured into those TIFs, that they estimated that they were going to build that Walmart or that Target, and then it never got built because of COVID. so that revenue was not there to make the agreement to pay that loan back that we, as the people of West Virginia, whether it be a municipality, we said we would pay that back. So we get to the end of this 30-year TIF, and we have not paid it back. This is giving the ability to extend 15 years so that the people of West Virginia are good to their word and pay back the loans that they agreed to. I think it's important that we pay back the loans we agreed to. I urge passage.
The question again is, shall the bill pass? Is there further debate on the bill? If not, shall recognize the gentleman 97, Douglas Hardy, to close debate on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to close here and talk a little bit about exactly what this piece of legislation does. This piece of legislation gives the county commission the ability to extend the TIF up to 15 years. That's exactly what this piece of legislation does. Since the inception of this TIF, it has went through the worst economy that we've seen since the 30s. It has went through a global pandemic that, as my friend from Mineral says, has stymied some of the process and some of the growth. There were businesses that were going to be built. There were businesses that were coming. There were revenues that were promised that were just put on hold due to these factors that we've talked about. The municipality has gained greatly from this TIF since its inception, and it will continue to gain greatly from this TIF as long as we let the county commission act to extend the timeline on this economic development area. I want to run through just a few things that the municipality has garnered from this TIF, and if we do not act in these TIFs, this one that we're talking here that so many people are concerned about, and others throughout the state, and they're not able to meet their financial obligations. I do believe that that financial obligation will ultimately end up here in this house for us to make sure that we are making someone whole. The municipality in this case has gained $73 million worth of infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, and such. They have also garnered $946,439 in municipal tax, the 1% tax that they get from their being home rule. They have garnered over $1.8 million in building permits. They have received $5,878,000 in construction B&O tax. They have received $862,000 in operational B&O taxes. They have also garnered $802,000 in fire fees that they would have never gotten. Hotel motel tax of $2.9 million. Excess levies on all of this development that would have never happened if this TIF was never started. Excess levies, 5.8% for schools, 1.8% for the cities, $600,000 for school buses, and $1.1 million for vital services. I think it's within this House's purview to give the county commission the ability to extend this TIF to make sure that it survives, it doesn't end up in this House, and we can make good on our obligations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 73 ayes, 24 nays, and 3 members absent. Majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3340 to revise the West Virginia Tax Increment Financing Act.
Are the title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman, the eighth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from passage.
The question is on the motion that from the gentleman, the eighth, that the bill take effect from passage. Those in favor of the motion will please vote aye. Those opposed will please vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 82 ayes, 15 nays, and 3 members absent. A majority member, 2/3 of members voting in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill effective for passage. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House and the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3353, relating to the limitations on the financial relationships with foreign entities that have values antithetical to those of the state of West Virginia.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? Okay, if not, gentleman from the first, I got McGann to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Purpose of this bill is to establish a prohibition against certain state financial activities with certain foreign entities. This bill restrains the purchasing division, the various secretaries of departments, along with the Economic Development Authority, from exercising authorities if they were to benefit certain foreign entities that are connected to state sponsors of terrorism or align with communist ideological regimes. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Gentleman from the 99th, the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Vice Chair yield for a question? Thank you, sir. We spoke about it yesterday. I just want to make sure this bill passage does not affect the Live Golf Tournament that's coming in this summer, correct?
You're good to go, man.
Thank you.
Gentleman from the 54th, Doug Pushkin's recognized.
It should.
Is there further debate on this bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 95 ayes, 0 nays, and 5 members absent. The majority of members voting in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3353, relating to the limitations on the financial relationships with foreign entities that have values antithetical to those of the state of West Virginia.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3376, relating to changing the term teacher in residence to clinical teacher of record.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from 38th, Doug Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill corrects a conflict in West Virginia Code 18A32A that was resulting from the passage of 2 bills that were amending that section in 2021. Both sections are currently printed in the code but have slightly different provisions. The bill simply reinserts the current program name, Clinical Teacher of Record, in several locations and also makes the name change in a related section. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 95 ayes, 0 nays, and 5 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3376, relating to changing the term teacher in residence to clinical teacher of record.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3387, extending the moratorium on the authorization of new convention and visitors bureaus for an additional 2 years.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman from the 99th, the clerk to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 3387 amends the Code of West Virginia to extend the moratorium on authorization of new convention and visitor bureaus for an additional 2 years to June 30th, 2026. The bill also clarifies when and how a new convention and visitor bureau can qualify for a distribution of hotel occupancy tax proceeds. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on that question. There were 88 ayes, 8 nays, and 4 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3387, extending the moratorium on the authorization of new convention and visitors bureaus for an additional 2 years.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3391, establishing filing deadlines for appeals of property tax valuations and issues involving property tax classification and taxability to the West Virginia Office of Tax Appeals.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from 97th, Doug Hardy, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to establish filing deadlines for appeals of property tax valuations and issues involving property tax classifications and taxability to the West Virginia Office of Tax Appeals, to provide that the appeals in the Office of Tax Appeals shall be heard de novo, to extend the hearing date for such matters, and to clarify the appeals from the Office of Tax Appeals shall be made to the Intermediate Court of Appeals, and further appeals shall be made to the Supreme Court of Appeals. That is the bill, Mr. Speaker. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 89 ayes, 6 nays, and 5 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3391, establishing filing deadlines for appeals of property tax valuations and issues involving property tax classification and taxability to the West Virginia Office of Tax Appeals.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from passage.
Question is on the motion that the bill take effect from passage. Those in favor of that motion will please vote aye. Those opposed will please vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 91 ayes, 3 nays, and 6 members absent. A majority, 2/3 of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Lady from 71st, Doug Kimball.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to return to the second order of business.
Okay, are there objections? Okay, no objections are heard. Ladies recognized.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to draw your attention to the West Gallery, and there sits my youngest daughter, Lila. So would you please give her a warm welcome?
Clerk will please report the next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3431, eliminating the requirement that the apprenticeship training tax credit base be limited to wages paid to apprentices in the construction trades.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from the 12th, Doug Chris, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill would remove the requirement that the tax credits available for wages paid to apprentice in trades participating in an apprenticeship training in construction trades under the program are only available to wages paid to the apprentice in the construction trades. The change will be for taxable years beginning on or after July 1, 2024. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there are 92 ayes, 1 nay, and 7 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3431, eliminating the requirement that the apprenticeship training tax credit base be limited to wages paid to apprentices in the construction trade.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3441, revising the training requirements for members of the Higher Education Policy Commission, Council for Community and Technical College Education, and the institutional governing boards.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from the 38th, Douglas Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill revises the training requirements for members of the Higher Education Policy Commission, the Council for Community and Technical College Education, and the institutional governing boards as follows. It requires the chancellors for the commission and council or their designees to develop a comprehensive orientation and training program for new members and continuing education opportunities for all ongoing members of those governing boards. The bill requires that orientation and training offered to new members shall comprise 6 hours of instruction time, which may be broken up over the member's first year of service, and provides a list of topics that must be covered. Ongoing members are required to complete at least 4 hours of training and development that is related to his or her duties each fiscal year. The bill further provides that the chancellors may grant credit for training, professional development, or continuing education developed or delivered by an institution of higher education or by a third-party training provider. Mr. Speaker, that's the bill, and I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 97 ayes, 0 nays, and 3 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3441, revising the training requirements for members of the Higher Education Policy Commission, Council for Community and Technical College Education, and the institutional governing boards.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3547, increasing the number of personal leave days that County Board of Education employees may use.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from 38th, Douglas Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill increases the number of days that an employee is permitted to use personal leave without regard to cause from 4 days to 5 days, effective July 1st of 2023. It also allows the employee, for the time that he uses for the employee. Okay, that's it, Mr. Speaker.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on this bill? Gentleman from 48, Douglas Hannah, is recognized.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, is there debate on this bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3547, increasing the number of personal leave days that County Board of Education employees may use.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3548, relating to teacher duty-free lunch and daily planning periods.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from 38th, Douglas Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill clarifies that a teacher's right to exchange his or her lunch recess to perform other duties at the school is strictly voluntary and requires a state board rule with the following minimum provisions. A uniform method for notifying teachers of the duties at the school for which a teacher may voluntarily exchange his or her lunch recess and the process for volunteering to make the exchange. A uniform prohibition on direct in-person contact by administrators to request, coerce, or order a teacher to exchange his or her lunch recess. 3, a uniform form for documenting the terms of the agreement between a teacher and the superintendent or his or her agent for the exchange. And 4, a uniform benefit for the exchange equal to 6.25% of the teacher's daily rate of pay. Mr. Speaker, that is the bill, and I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on that question. There were 97 ayes, 0 nays, and 3 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3548, relating to teacher duty-free lunch and daily planning periods.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3549, relating to classroom teachers and special education classroom teachers, individualized education program requirements.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman from the 38th, Doug Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. This bill prohibits a regular classroom teacher or special education classroom teacher who is required to participate in an IEP committee from being the person also required to prepare the IEP or reducing it to writing, unless no other professional educator with the knowledge required is available. That's the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on this bill? Gentleman from the 47th, Doug Longenecker is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to remind the body that sometime last week, someone in this body made a comment that this legislature it continues to erode or chip away at public education. We're the enemies of the teachers in public education, et cetera. And I just want to say that this bill and the previous 2 bills are an example of why that was a very inaccurate and unfortunate comment. These bills are good for our teachers, good for our public school system, and I urge passage of this bill. Thank you.
The question again is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on that question. There were 96 ayes, 1 nay, and 3 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3549, relating to classroom teachers and special education classroom teachers, individualized education program requirements.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Are there further bills on third reading? If not, gentleman from the 8th.
I move, subject to announcements, that the House stand in recess until 6 p.m.
Are there announcements? Gentleman from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Rules will meet behind the chambers at 5:45.
Gentleman from the 99th, Doug Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Economic Development and Tourism will meet today at 3 o'clock in the House Finance Room. Republican members will caucus at 2:45.
Gentleman from the 12th, Doug Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will meet today, February 23rd at 4 p.m. in the Finance Committee room. The agenda is posted. Republican members of the caucus will meet in the office of the chairman at 3:50. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 43rd, Dr. Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education Republican members will caucus at 1:45 in the chairman's office.
Gentleman from the 1st, Doug McGeehan.
Thank you, Speaker. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Republican members will caucus in the chairman's office at 4:45.
Gentleman from the 2nd, Douglas Teslo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Energy and Manufacturing will meet tomorrow, or today, at 2 o'clock. And the Republicans will caucus at 1:45. I hasten to add that we will have a hearing on Monday, February 27th at 9 a.m. for Bill 3446 here in the House chamber. So you can keep that in mind as well. Thank you.
Gentleman 21st, Doug Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure will meet today at 2:30 p.m. in the House Education Committee room. Republican members will caucus at 2:15.
Gentleman 15th, Doug Keaton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This afternoon into the evening time, Crossroads Pregnancy Care Center will be having an open house for their new facility right over here at 2010 Courier Street from 4 to 8 p.m. I believe there will be light refreshments, and a group of us will meet at 4 o'clock with former member Delegate Kayla Kessinger to walk over and kind of get introduced to the thing. So if anybody's interested in touring the new pregnancy center right down the street, the type of organization that we're supporting with House Bill 2002, you're more than welcome. 4 o'clock today. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 23rd, Delegate Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, the West Virginia AFL-CIO Joint Labor Caucus will be held in House Gov.org immediately following the floor session. Even though most of you have already eaten, there will be food provided. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 51st, Delegate Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee on Judiciary will meet this afternoon in the committee meeting room at 3 p.m. The Republicans will caucus in the chairman's office at 2:45. The agenda is posted. In addition, your House Judiciary Committee will hold a public hearing on House Bill 3042 relating to forbidding excessive government limitations on exercise of religion, Friday, February 24 from 4 to 5 p.m. in the House chamber. Registration to speak during the public hearing will open at 3:30 p.m. on Friday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other announcements? If not, the question is on the motion that the House stand in recess until 6 o'clock. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. We are in recess until 6 o'clock.